Hey guys, Kenny's for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 3, Episode 6, Among Us Hide. And I was looking forward to this episode, although I was a bit disappointed because, of course, we had to go back to the regular story. And I'm surprised at how much I didn't want to go back because, obviously, I loved last week's episode so much. I still think it's probably the greatest episode that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D's ever done. You guys probably heard rave reviews at it, and unfortunately, this episode barely focused on Jemma's plot at all. However, I will tell you guys, it had that episode not existed, this would have been the best episode of the season, because this was an amazing episode all on its own. I love this episode. I thought this was an amazing episode, and an amazing twist that I did not see coming whatsoever. They did it. They fooled me. They did away. They made the show unpredictable, and I love that. I definitely really love that they made it so unpredictable. But let's get in this episode because it was very unpredictable. Like I said, I really didn't predict a lot of what happened in this episode, so let's get into it. Basically, we see Melinda looks upset as Coulson and the medical team roll Andrew on a gurney. As we know, Andrew was shot, supposedly made out to be dead. They even said he was dead in the promo. But they report to Melinda that he's not dead. He's actually alive. And I'm happy that they kept Andrew alive because they were setting up some really good stuff with him and Melinda, and I really didn't want them to end that plot because it's probably one of the most interesting things that's going on with their character. So Melinda asks Andrew what happened. He says he went to a store to get something for a headache and a transfer student, and two men followed him in. And Coulson tells him that they were Hydra, and he was just too trusting, obviously. These two, he obviously thought that they were just regular people when they were actually Hydra agents, and it really shows how dangerous the situation really is. And Coulson basically, Melinda says she knows why they went after him, and Andrew says Coulson had a man tailing him. That allowed him to get cover, but there was a gasoline and a lighter, and he assumes that he was thrown from the explosion. So Melinda runs into Lance in the hallway. They argue over his decision to go after Grant. She doesn't think it's a very smart idea at all, despite Andrew's dangerous situation. And obviously, what just happened to Andrew could happen to Lance very well. And obviously, Lance doing what he's doing, it's not going to end well. And he says Coulson ordered him to take Grant out. And Coulson, and I do agree with Grant. I mean, with Lance here, he had a mission. Coulson gave him this mission. He's not going to say no. It's just that simple. He's not going to say no to Coulson. You don't say no to Coulson. He knows what he's doing. So Coulson takes him off that assignment and puts Melinda on it, and she says she's back. And I thought that was a smart thing to do. It's not that Grant wasn't good at what he was doing, but Coulson, Melinda is just better at doing that sort of thing. Grant, I think Lance, especially with Grant, obviously Melinda and Grant have a history, while Lance and Grant don't. So it would make sense why he would put her on it, and I can definitely understand why he did that. So Grant oversees his operation and complains to Kebo that he let in S.H.I.E.L.D. assassin in, and Kebo points out that he followed Grant's own procedures and that Von Strucker messed up the kill job. So, basically, they're starting to blame things on Werner here. Werner still hasn't checked back in. They decide that Werner knows too much, and Grant sends Kebo after Werner. Obviously, they don't trust Werner very much. It seemed like they were going to, but like I told you guys, I really knew that there was something more going on with Werner. I could just tell that they really don't trust him very much. He, like I said, wants power, and Grant does not want him to have that power, so they're going to do whatever he can to make sure he does not have that power. So Coulson finds Daisy. She's pissed about what happened with Lash. She theorizes that Lash is in the ATCU based on his ability to transform. And of course, most of this episode, she's trying to figure out who Lash is. The whole episode, pretty much. And Coulson is getting a tour of the ATCU faculty there today. So Daisy says she'll work on Lash's identity. And Coulson tells her to keep it off Rosalind's radar. And Rosalind and Coulson get a lot closer in this episode. Again, you're really starting to see some romantic chemistry between these two. Daisy wonders if he's getting too attached, and she asks about Melinda. And I do agree, Daisy saying, he might be getting too attached, because they still don't know if they can fully trust her. Even though she agreed to it, they still don't know. I mean, she never said, I'm not going to betray you. She said that those could be just words. I do agree what Daisy is saying, that he should listen to, that he shouldn't be too trusting of her. So she asks about Melinda, and Melinda finds Bobby and shoves her against the wall. She's angry that Lance nearly got Andrew killed because of her. They fight, and Bobby takes her down. This has nothing to do with Bobby. This is not all Bobby's fault. And she realizes that Melinda was testing her to see if she was ready for a mission. And Melinda welcomes Bobby back to duty. I thought that was awesome that she did that. I always really like the bonding between these two. Bobby and Melinda are heading out to find Grant when basically Lance says, stops Bobby, and he wants to go with them, but Bobby is disappointed that Lance put an innocent at risk, and, you know, Lance isn't thrilled that Bobby's going back in the field. You know, he doesn't really think it's safe for her, and she goes anyway. She doesn't want to listen to him. She's going to do what she wants to do. Melinda reveals that the student from the store got away. She also reveals his true identity is Werner. You know, that Werner is the student, and she finds his account at a bank in the Cayman Islands, and Werner is with one of his and you can tell that they are definitely starting to figure out what's going on here. Very quickly, they're figuring out this, and I like that they're getting information very quickly, so that way we can just get things moving. I definitely like that. So, Werner's with one of his father's old Hydra allies, Gideon Malik, and basically Werner tells him how awful Grant is, and how he really doesn't trust Grant very much. You know, he doesn't really like, how much of a leader Grant is, because, let's face it, Grant is very powerful, and he's kind of a dick. If you don't do what he says, he'll be very pissed, and basically, Malik says the old guard would never have put up with this kind of thing, and says he'll take care of everything. So, Coulson is with Rosiland on his way to his tour when Rosiland gets an emergency call. She tries to drop him off, but Coulson refuses to leave. Rosiland is hesitant, resistant, but finally agrees to let him stay. She tells the driver to take her home, and basically, that didn't go so well. So, they get some more in this episode, though. Fitz is creating false IDs for Bobby and Melinda. Lance questions Fitz, helping Jemma reopen the portal. Of course, he doesn't know what Jemma's been through. He doesn't think that Fitz should be helping Jemma's ex. And, of course, Fitz asks Lance to leave. You know, there's a lot going through his head right now. He doesn't need to hear about what's going on, because obviously Lance knows what's going on. He knows about Will and everything, and what I like about Fitz is that he just wants to help her. You know, he's not interested. Fitz does not care that this is someone that Jemma was with. He just wants to help her because he's her best friend and he'll do anything for her. And I love that about Lance, you know, Fitz, even though he probably is upset that, you know, he understands why Jemma and Will did have sex. He understands that completely, but he's just doing this for a friend, and I really like that, and Lance needs to understand that. So, Daisy finds Andrew walking through the halls in an IV. She asks him about Lash and why he would have spared her, and Andrew says he's not sure. Daisy reveals that she saw him transform at least his shadow, and, you can obviously, you know, Lash would have spared her for a reason. He wouldn't just not spare her. So Andrew asks if Lincoln can help, but Daisy says they can't find him, and I thought they were going to reveal that Lincoln was going to be Lash. That's what I thought was going to happen here. But that doesn't happen because Lincoln doesn't appear the whole episode. But Mack interrupts and calls Daisy into another room. He theorizes that Banks may be Lash, and they decide to track Banks down, and Lance invites him along, and basically they're thinking that he's the one that is most likely Lash. So Bobby and Melinda use their fake IDs to infiltrate the Cayman Islands bank and gain access to the lockbox vaults. They're left alone and bust open Strucker's lockbox, and Fitz warns them that they triggered an alarm and they are locked inside. The bank returns with 2 guards. Melinda's ready to fight, but Bobby tries to talk their way out of it. It's working until a guard reaches for his gun. Melinda attacks, and she and Bobby take them down and leave with the contents of the lockbox. So, basically, that didn't work out as well as they want. At least they got the lockbox. That's what they need. They need the lockbox, and they need to figure out what's going on there. So Mac, Daisy, and Lance are staking out Banks. Daisy reads more about him discharged from the military, brought on to an anti-alien task force after the Battle of New York, and it sounds pretty plausible that he could be Lash, and some of Mac and Daisy's anger about Andrew bubbles to the surface until Banks drives off and they tail him, because they obviously want to know if he's Lash. You know, they pretty much think that he is, and they want to know that he is. So Mac and Daisy are really pissed at Andrew, though, mainly because of just what he's doing and the fact that he allied with Coulson. They're really upset about him. It's understandable. So Rosalind and Coulson arrive at Rosalind's home. Two officers are there. There was a break-in, and Coulson investigates her living room. He notices that the furniture is brand new, and there's a baseball bat with signatures. And who broke into Rosalind's house? That's what I want to know. I mean, clearly it's someone that wants the Inhumans because they know that she's testing on them, so they probably want to kill the Inhumans or something. I don't really know, but someone definitely broke into her house. Now, who that is, we don't know, but I definitely like that. So Daisy's team follows Banks. He gets out of his car to take a call. They're discussing what to do when Lance lets himself out and shoots Banks with an ICER. He drags Banks back inside the van, tells Daisy and Mack to take a DNA sample so they can test for Inhuman markers. And Jemma is trying to comfort Andrew in a slightly convincing way, betraying how much she enjoys the role reversal, and Andrew realizes how weak it can make you feel to be on the couch, and basically Daisy calls Jemma, asks her to run the blood analysis, and Daisy's team finds nothing else of interest on Banks, and Banks' phone gets a message that a target is en route to some place called Endotech. They leave Banks behind and go to check it out. They want to know what Endotech is and what's going on there, so that's where they go. So a couple leave, and Rosalind provides some burgers for dinner for herself and Coulson, and it's from Coulson's favorite burger place, and Coulson mentions that nothing of value seems to have been taken, accuses Rosalind of staging the break-in to make Coulson sympathize with her and delay the faculty tour, the facility tour, and I can understand what Coulson is saying, that, he thinks that, again, Daisy said don't get too close, and he thinks that Rosalind might just be doing this because she doesn't want him to go to that facility tour. And Rosalind suggests that Coulson could have set it up himself. And I like this scene. They're basically accusing each other. And frustrated, Rosalind finally agrees to take him to the facility. It's really funny stuff, I have to say. That's something I really like between Rosalind and Coulson. It's actually pretty funny, definitely. The way they're just flat out accusing each other is really great. I definitely love that. It shows that even though they're possibly falling in love, they still don't really trust each other. And I love that. So Fitz examines the lockbox materials. They lead Bobby and Matt and Melinda to a penthouse in Lisbon. And Melinda questions why Bobby was so reluctant to fight in the islands, because obviously this is Bobby we're talking about. Why wouldn't she want to just fight there? And basically Melinda thinks that Bobby is keeping herself locked up and that there's something that she doesn't want to do. That she, for whatever reason, doesn't want to fight. And Melinda encourages Bobby to let her experience with Grant make her stronger and not weaker. And basically, Kevo returns to Grant with a phone call. It's Malik on the other line. If you remember, Bobby was kidnapped by Grant, so that's most likely why Bobby is acting out, because last season, Bobby was kidnapped by Grant and almost killed by him, and obviously, she's worried. What I like about Bobby is even though she's a badass, she is still worried that the worst could happen to her, which is understandable. I can understand why Bobby's upset. It makes sense, definitely. I can understand that. So Kevo returns to Grant with a phone call. It's Malik on the other line, and Grant says he was wondering when he would hear from Malik, though he doesn't know Malik's name, and that Malik is the one everyone else was afraid of. And Malik offers redemption, saying that Werner shouldn't be on the board. Grant says that Malik doesn't understand the game he's playing, and Malik says that Werner is a liability and therefore lost assets, and basically Malik offers Werner to Grant, saying that he's sacrificing a pawn to save the game. And Mac lists the impressive security on the penthouse. Daisy has a dwarf 2.0 she stole from Fitz to help them get a look inside. And Jemma calls Daisy and says Banks is not an Inhuman. She knows right away there is no way that Banks is Lash because he's not Inhuman. So that's one off the list, right off the list there. So that was interesting. And again, I kept thinking they were going to reveal that it was going to be Lincoln. And again, it's not Lincoln because we don't see him. I'll say that right now. So Jemma talks to Fitz in the lab. She asks if they have time now to look at the portal simulation, and Fitz says he's run dozens of them and none have worked. He says they won't give up, and Jemma says she knows this isn't easy for him. And I honestly, at this point, I kind of want to watch a whole show just around these two because their stuff is really good, I have to say. And Jemma walks away. Fitz opens up a file of information on Will. He obviously wants to help her out. I like that. I mean, you can tell that Jemma feels bad. She really does feel bad. I mean, she had sex with this guy, and Fitz doesn't really seem to care because it's because he knows the situation she was in. He knows that there was nothing she could do. He's not upset with her for that because she was all alone. She needed someone. Obviously, Fitz wasn't there. There was nothing she really could do. She needed somebody there for her, and I like that Fitz understands that. That definitely does make sense, and I really liked that, I have to say. I definitely thought that was very well done. Definitely really good stuff there. So I'm really loving the storyline between Fitz and Jemma, and it's the most one of my favorite storylines. Definitely, they've done a great job making this a lot more interesting, which I really like. I don't know if the rest of the team does seem to know, but I think it's quite interesting. I just hope they focus more on it and not as less as they did in this episode. I get that it was most of last week's episode, but we barely focused on it here, and we had so much focus on it that I want them to focus on it more just because it's really interesting stuff. So, Daisy's team assumes Endotech is in front of the ACCU. They wait to see what's inside. The delivery arrives, and it's a containment unit with someone inside being monitored. And a robot arm grabs a container, takes it away. The dwarf catches a shot of Rosalind and Coulson observing. Daisy's upset because, she just doesn't want these two together. Mac tells her to pull the dwarf back before they're discovered. Obviously, this is very dangerous what they're doing. Rosalind explains to Coulson that the stasis gel keeps the subjects asleep. She says she knows it looks bad, and I like what she tells Coulson here. She talks about how these people were in trouble, that being inhuman is like a disease, and they're close to the cure. They basically, now this was interesting, basically realized that they have a cure to possibly being inhuman, and that is very possible why they couldn't see, why why Banks wasn't Inhuman. I think he was Inhuman, but maybe he got the cure from Rosalind and now he's not Inhuman because clearly it's working. So she says these people were in trouble, and Coulson puts together that Rosalind lost somebody, and I really like this. I like this character moment with her. She says she lost her husband years ago. He was a cardiologist who died of cancer, and she says she would have done anything to do for him what they're doing for the Inhumans. Rosalind admits she might actually want Coulson to like her. She kind of wants to move on. That would make sense as to why she's being so passive, because she doesn't really know if she wants to move on. And I think now in this moment, she's realizing that she can move on. And that's really great stuff. I really love that scene, I have to say. Definitely shows why Rosalind's character is so great. I really am loving her character. So Kebo is touring Warner. Bobby and Melinda bust in. Kelbo kills Warner and bolts, leaving two henchmen with Melinda, and Warner's dead. Warner is killed, and that was pretty crazy. So this scene was insane, I have to say. I mean, this scene felt almost like a season finale. That's how crazy it was. I mean, it's November sweep, so it makes sense. Leaving two henchmen with Melinda as Bobby tries to follow. She takes out another sentry and then fights Kebo. Melinda finishes with the guards and pulls down Warner. She asks where to find Grant, but Warner is traumatized. Kebo gets Bobby in a pool, tries to drown her. She grabs a baton, fights her way out, and that was awesome. Once out of the pool, she used the stun of the baton to electrocute Kebo, and that was such an awesome scene, I have to say, especially because Bobby was so scared. That was awesome. I things like that, that's what I live for in this show, is scenes like that. That's why I love this show. I mean, I love this show for character moments as well, but things like that, that's awesome. And I'm not gonna lie, I did miss things like this last week, but I really wasn't thinking about it last week because of how compelling last week's story was. I didn't really think about the action, but will admit that it was great to see it again because we didn't have any of it last week, really. So Warner tells Melinda that he thought he had Garner, but he didn't know he transformed into that thing. He remembers what happened, and basically seeing Andrew transform into Lash, and yes, Andrew is Lash. Holy shit. Holy shit, I did not think Andrew was going to be Lash, but that is huge. I love that Andrew is Lash. I thought this was going to be a character we hadn't met yet, but that's awesome. I love that. That definitely makes sense as to why Andrew is acting the way he is. I definitely really love this, I have to say, and this is definitely something I didn't see coming at all. I didn't ever think that Andrew was going to be Lash. I really love this plot. I think this is a really great twist, and they really did a good job with not, with keeping this very secret. I don't think anyone ever suspected that Andrew was going to be Lash, and I think they're definitely doing that very well done. And not only is he Lash, the thing that's interesting about this, though, is Andrew is, of course, leading well, at least right now, at least, he is basically, along with Daisy and Mack, leading the Secret Warriors. Why is he doing this? Why is he killing these Inhumans? What does he want to do? I mean, how did he turn to Lash? These are things I want to know and what's going on with them. But this is definitely very interesting. Lash then killed everyone else. Andrew himself sets the store on fire. And that's actually what happened. He actually set the store on fire, and that's how he got out. So basically, I love that we found out that he was lying, and Melinda insists that that's not true, and Werner asks what he is. Melinda says she doesn't know. She doesn't want to believe that he really is Lash when he is, but I think she knows that he is, but she just doesn't want to believe it. She can't believe that her husband would be that. She just can't believe that. So the end of this episode, though, very interesting stuff and very intense. Daisy's on the phone with Lincoln. He says he's safe as houses. He still won't tell her where he is, but he says he'll reach out soon. They hang up just before the call can be traced, and they're going to find him at some point. I know we're going to find Lincoln at some point. By the way, probably my least favorite interesting thing going on in this show. Just not that interested right now. Andrew overheard, and she asks about where Lincoln is, and he tells her that he'd probably be safer at the base, and that's how this episode ends. So, of course, Daisy and Mack have no idea what's going on with Andrew. Why Andrew is Lash, we don't know. But I find this all very interesting. I really want to know what's going on with Andrew. Why is he transforming into Lash? Why did he decide to become Lash? These are things that we just don't know, and I definitely want to find out really what's going on there, because this could definitely become a very compelling storyline, I have to say. I really like where they're heading with this. Let's talk about Bobby. That kill with Kebo was awesome. I love that. I thought that was really awesome stuff to see. But as far as Melinda goes, this is going to be very interesting how Melinda deals with this, because she doesn't want to believe that Andrew is Lash, and I think she knows. She just doesn't want to think it's true. She doesn't see her husband that way. She doesn't think he could do something like that. You know, they always say the innocent ones are actually not the innocent ones, and I think that very much shows that. You can tell that there definitely is something more going on there, and I want to find out more of what's going on with Lash. You know, why is Andrew Lash? Out of all the people, why Andrew? What happened to him? We don't know. By the way, guys, I forgot to say, this was the 50th episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which, great job, definitely. It really shows how far the show has come, which I loved, I have to say. But Werner's dead. Werner definitely is dead. I mean, that was pretty crazy that he died. I mean, it was pretty crazy that Werner did die. I mean, definitely. Rosiland and Coulson, I really like the bonding between these two. You know, you can tell that she wants to give Coulson a chance, even though it might not be the best thing for them to work together. I think she genuinely likes Coulson. She genuinely cares about him, and she genuinely wants to start something with him. I don't think she knows what she wants to start, but she definitely has an idea of what she wants to do, and I really like that. I like seeing these two bond. It's cute, I have to say. It's not something I really, expect to say on the show, but it really is cute. Again, with Fitz. Fitz is probably the most vulnerable character on the show right now, as well as Jemma. Their whole thing is very interesting. I want to see a whole episode around them. I'm sorry, guys, I missed their stuff. I love this episode. It's just, I love so much what was going on last week that I just want to see more of it. It's just, this always happens when you do a single character-focused episode. I want to see more of this show. The only show I don't see myself doing with that is The Leftovers, and that's because they shift focus, like, every single week. Any other show that does a single character-focused episode, I want to see more of that plot, and I think we saw enough of it tonight, just not enough. But overall, guys, amazing episode. Definitely would have been the best episode of the season. Had we not gotten that amazing episode last week, this would have been the best episode of the season. I definitely really love this episode. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode, and we'll see you guys in the next video, which will be for Scream Queens, which hopefully is as great as the last one was. The last one was just surprisingly great. Hopefully this one is great too, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.